All right, good morning. Good morning, everybody. If you would please take your seats, we'll get started. We've got a busy day today, and so glad you're here. So I know many of you have come from far across this country, so thank you so much for all your travel. We've got friends from San Antonio, friends from California, friends from Seattle. We've got really just many friends across the country. And so in some ways, this is actually just a great celebration this time of year. And we couldn't be more excited to have you here, but also to have an action-packed day of our speakers here, and certainly our most honorable speaker, our keynote speaker, the Secretary Chris Wright. So I just wanted to welcome you. My name is Drew Bond, and I am the CEO of C3 Solutions. Allow me, if I could, just to set the stage a little bit before we introduce Secretary Wright. So many of you have been a part of C3 Solutions from our beginning in 2020, and we couldn't thank you enough. And so I just wanted to say thank you. Really, our partners, our donors, our friends have allowed us to be an organization that has really become a resource for members of Congress and the administration, and we believe is helping to change the narrative and the policies around climate and energy and the environment in a really important way. So working together, we really have changed the narrative and the policy approach on energy, climate, and the environment. What was once all about gloom and doom, top-down and energy scarcity, is now all about optimism, bottom-up, and energy abundance. Republicans, conservatives, libertarians, the center-right largely have embraced a leadership role in reducing emissions from a position of strength. The agenda is no longer about subtracting and dividing to get an unachievable goal of net zero that plays into the hands of China at the expense of American energy security. The agenda is now about adding and multiplying, strengthening American energy security with abundant, affordable, reliable energy that is the cleanest in the world. You might say that we've moved from being net zero focused to being net abundance focused. American innovation is rising to the challenge like never before because we were able to address these challenges like energy demand from data centers and AI. So this is why we're here today. This is why you are here today. To listen, to learn, to be challenged and challenged, to build on the momentum that our country and world need most right now. So my call to you is that you're not here to be a passive bystander. You're here because you're a leader. You're a leader in your field: technology, policy, investment, business, marketing, communications, international. We have friends here from Paraguay. And many of you across multiple fields. So let's work together to accelerate American energy leadership for the sake of people and the planet. So I want to give you a quick glance of today's agenda. We're going to cover a lot of ground, as I mentioned, before we kick off the day with Secretary Wright. He will give us his vision on energy abundance and innovation and security. He's going to take some questions, so get ready. And then we'll move into lunch, a dessert discussion on how to best address energy poverty. We'll have the privilege of hearing from Representatives Pfluger and Malloy about permitting reform. And then later this afternoon, we'll dive into the innovation ecosystem, energy for AI, and finish the day strong on addition and multiplication for American energy dominance. So it's an action-packed day. Buckle up. We're so glad you're here. And before I introduce our speaker, I wanted just to give a special thanks to our sponsors. We couldn't have done it without you, our sponsors and speakers. And so if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to embarrass you for a second. If you would stand when I call your organization's name. And all of you should have one of these at your table. It's a snapshot of the agenda today. And on the back are our sponsors. So stand together. If you would please stand. Howard Energy Partners, Deploy US, Ham Institute for American Energy, Charles S. Mott Foundation, ClearPath, the Clean Energy Buyers Association, Arnold Ventures, Fermi America, Emerson Collective, Amazon, Pickering Energy Partners, Conserve America, Van Ness Feldman, and Energy Infrastructure Alliance Forum. If you would please join me in giving them a round of applause. We couldn't have done this without you. So with that, I wanted to give a bit of maybe a non-traditional introduction to a speaker who needs no introduction. When I first met Chris, now the Secretary of Energy, it was back in 2022, and it was clear that he was an enthusiastic energy entrepreneur with a passion for people. I recall sitting in his office in Colorado and talking about our shared passion for helping people rise out of poverty with abundant, affordable, reliable energy that is clean as practically possible. We talked about how economic freedom leads to the cleanest environments, and he agreed to write a foreword for our 2023 Free Economies, Our Clean Economies report. And so you'll see the foreword written here and a QR code to our most recent report. We also talked about how the narrative and the solutions around climate had been co-opted by the far left extremists, and that we really needed to flip the script from top down to bottom up. Little did I know that Chris would become our next Secretary of Energy. In fact, when President Trump was declared winner, I got a phone call from my friend Mike Howard, and Mike said, "Hey, you're a DC insider. Who do you think is going to be the next Secretary of Energy?" And I said, "Well, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be anybody that's being named right now in the media. I don't actually have any idea who it's going to be. I'm guessing that President Trump is going to pick a governor." But then I said, "Mike, I think we need somebody who really understands business, who understands technology and also understands energy. We need someone committed to free markets and technology and it being a neutral approach, bottom up to energy." I told Mike literally that we needed someone like Chris. I wasn't the first person to think that or say that, so I don't say that to say I was the smartest guy in the room or in DC at the time. There was a chorus of energy leaders who had been saying that long before Mike and I had that conversation. So with that, please allow me to just welcome our Secretary of Energy, the 17th Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright. We couldn't be more blessed to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Great to be here. And I'll be brief with remarks because I think question and answer is always more entertaining and more fun. But I love to sit in a room of people that are passionate about energy. And you traveled from all around to be here to discuss and dialogue energy. That's awesome, and that warms my heart. It has been a motivator for me since I was the age of Mike Howard's son, who's sitting there. At a very young age, I got intrigued by energy and what powered the sun and the stars and how that works, how that rolls into human conditions and opportunities. And so I've been all in on energy all my life. And I'll summarize that by saying, look, there's about 1 billion people that live like us, that wear fancy clothes and travel to conferences, and on cold days like today, just turn up our thermostats, and when it's hot, we just turn on our air conditioners. It's a pretty awesome lifestyle, impossible and unimaginable throughout all of human history. But today there's 7 billion people that don't have all those opportunities, and of course they want those opportunities. Obvious conclusion there, we need massively more energy. You'll hear more from Mike and the discussion in energy poverty. We also have millions of easily preventable deaths, if not for a little bit additional energy to people that are least fortunate in the world. So to me, there's a pretty obvious conclusion. The world needs massively more energy. Yet we had a previous administration that was all about energy subtraction. We got to stop this, we got to stop that, we got to stop this, but we're going to replace it all eventually with stuff, of course, that only is a very small subset of energy called the electricity sector. And there it doesn't work all the time, and it turns out it's really expensive. Like, that was just a catastrophically bad plan. So I was thrilled when President Trump got elected. I was almost as surprised as Drew when I got a phone call to come work on energy. But I was thrilled to do it because President Trump, I mean, he's an East Coast real estate developer. He's not a lifelong energy nerd like me, but he knows in his bones instinctually that energy is central to human well-being, energy is central to economic and national power, and that the policy that made sense for the United States was more energy. My whole life, everyone said we want energy independence, energy independence. And most of my life, we continued to just grow our imports and move away from energy independence, which never existed in my lifetime. We never produced as much energy as we consumed in my lifetime until relatively recently. But to President Trump, that's not enough. That's not enough. We got to be dominant. And people say, what does that mean? And dominant means producing so much energy that you push down the price of energy, which makes everyone be able to pay their bills easier, raises the standard of living, particularly of lower wage workers, and that gives us so much energy that we can export it massively. We've got allies all around the world that count on foes and dangerous nations for their energy supplies. His vision was simple. If we produce so much energy in all different forms, we can be that secure supplier of energy to our allies around the world. We can drive reshoring of manufacturing to our country, increasing living standards by both lowering cost to pay bills and by businesses more competitive in the United States than anywhere else in the world. Pretty common sense agenda. And it's an honor to be here, and we should start the dialogue with Drew. When questions come, ask me absolutely anything you want. I'm very against any scripted answers or scripted questions. That's just not my style. I don't know Drew's questions, but whatever they are, I'm happy to engage with them. But I loved his story. I remember meeting him. I wasn't sure if it was 3 years ago or 4 years ago, but yeah, we connected right away. People who loved freedom, believed in markets. I also loved how he said, energy, climate, and the environment. 3 things. I have been a lifelong outdoor mountain climber, adventurer, passionate environmentalist in the traditional sense of the word, meaning I care about clean air, clean water, species preservation, wildlife preservation. These are awesome luxuries of wealthy societies. I had to resign from my environmental group board when I accepted this position. A free market group in Bozeman called the Property Environment Research Center. How do we use market mechanisms to drive awesome outcomes? So, and one of my many frustrations with the climate movement or climate mania has been it's just taken all the oxygen out of the room for all the other traditional environmental causes and displaced them all in sort of a hapless, naive attempt to address a real problem. So I'm happy to talk about the real problem, but most of what you hear about climate change is both entirely political and almost entirely nonsense. But it is indeed a real issue, and there are real and sincere efforts to look how to continue to drive decarbonization of our energy system. All right, Drew, look forward to the dialogue. Thanks everyone for being here.